Hey there, and welcome to GamePoints episode 110, our weekly little get-together. We talk about recent gaming news. I am, as always, your host, Stephen Brown, and joining me today is...
David. Very
Tonight...
excited that we made it to 110.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. 110 weeks of a wasted hour. Think about that.
For sure. Just count it.
So, tonight, we're going to go over Paris Games Week. Sony had a big old conference today. They were listing it as a continuation of E3, and while I don't necessarily think it rose to that label, it definitely had some surprises in there. We're going to get into a more detailed account that went behind the scenes of Visceral Games via Jason Schreier, that man who loves to dig way deep into articles. We also have some...
It's a shit show.
Yeah, it is a total shit show. We also have some random news we're going to finish out the week with. Metal Gear Solid Survive, something David's going to get really pissed off about. I'll save that for when we get to it.
All right.
As always, if you're watching us live, please feel free to join in the chat below. We do stream every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here at Twitch TV/GamePoints. But if you can't join us live, feel free to check out our YouTube page. Just type in GamePoints, one word, we should pop right up there. Regardless of where you're at, like, follow, subscribe, comment, join the conversation. That's the whole point of this show, is to let us vent, primarily let me vent, because I find this very cathartic, and let you also vent as well. Just keep it civil if you can. David.
Bring it. What's up?
Paris Games Week is currently going on, and Sony kicked it off at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here this morning.
I think we should talk about this, because one of the big things that we talked about in our E3 show is how Sony didn't really have a lot of big guns, because they didn't show anything that we didn't already know about. There was no surprises at E3 this year for Sony, and one of the big things is like, oh, they're probably going to wait.
I'm trying to think, but yeah, I think you're right. But they started with a big one, but I want to get to that when we talk about the show itself.
Yeah, but I just thought it was funny because we were like waiting, like, when are they going to actually announce stuff? Because we know they have stuff in the pipeline. We know stuff's coming. And I think we both just assumed it was going to be at their expo. So it kind of surprised me how much stuff they had to show off at Paris Games Week.
A couple things.
Is that just me? Is that just weird to me? I don't know.
No, it was surprised that they held this much back. But I do remember them saying for their E3 conference, everything that they were going to show at E3 was slated at the time to be in early 2018. The first half of 2018. So yeah, everything that you saw today, probably second half or later.
Makes sense.
Also, when it comes to PSX, the PlayStation Experience, which is happening, I want to say the first week of December down in Anaheim, I believe. Rumor is, don't expect much there. It sounds like Sony is not holding much in reserve for that. Just a rumor. I could be wrong, but we'll definitely see how that shakes out.
It's just strange because the first PlayStation Experience that they held, the one that was actually in San Francisco, they had a shit ton of crazy announcements.
Yeah.
Like, that's where the world learned of the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah.
So it's just...
Was it where they learned? No, that's not where they learned of the Final Fantasy VII remake. We saw a gameplay.
Is that where the first trailer was?
No, I think the first trailer was at E3. In fact, I know for the fact the first trailer was at E3 because there is... Was it? Shit, I don't remember.
At this point, I don't know. It's been a while. What was that? 2014?
Well, yeah, and that game's still like 3 years out, so let's not worry about that.
Let's talk about this week before we fuck all this up anymore.
So during their pre-show, Sony actually showed off a bunch of new stuff then too. First and foremost, we're not going to go over everything, by the way. I'm just going to go over some highlights. If you want to watch it all, I'm sure you can check it out on YouTube. But
quite a bit.
The pre-show. During the pre-show, they featured Guacamole 2. Or Guacamole 2, rather.
Why am I going to mess that up?
It's
a fun one to say.
I just did, anyways. I loved Guacamole. It is an amazing Metroidvania game with a luchador skin wrapped around it. I highly recommend it. Those guys at, I think, Drinkbox is the name of the studio. They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
Also, David, did you see the trailer for the Hong Kong Massacre?
The Hotline Miami game?
Yes.
That's not Hotline Miami?
It looks like Hotline Miami, directed by John Woo.
Which is funny, because that was already kind of... I don't know.
Well, there was that game called Stranglehold way back when. That was essentially the sequel to Hard Boiled. This looks like...
Oh, shit, okay.
Yeah, this looks like that, but with Hotline Miami's mechanics.
Yeah.
So that looked amazing. A big PlayStation VR push with that 10 plus games shown, and I'm happy
Dude,
for
I was
that.
so excited about this.
Yeah,
I think we've been
Sony
talking
could
about
have.
it for a while. How VR slowed down, and I'm like, Sony is really the company that has to double down for VR to go
Yeah,
anywhere.
and they are. They
Because
definitely are.
because there's so many PS4s in the wild, and because their install base is so huge, and the fact that their VR headset works for more people than like the Vive or Oculus, because you do need better computers to use Vive or Oculus. You
Yep.
just do, and not everyone has the right to run it. But anybody with a PS4 can get a PS4 VR, and this is what we need. We just need them to make a shit ton of games. Some of them are gonna
They
suck.
definitely are.
Some of them might be great, and those standouts are what we need to actually get VR to be more common. I'm just so excited. I'm so happy that this happened.
Yeah, keep in mind what they showed at the Paris Games Week pre-show here isn't everything that's even coming out this year, because this year you have Supermassive's first-person shooter game, which I can't remember what that's called, but they also have their horror game coming out with Elijah Wood in it. That's supposed to be the prequel to Until Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a big VR push. Additionally, you also have Resident Evil 7's big DLC with Chris Redfield still coming out, which is supposed to be free for people who have the game. So a lot of good stuff. And finally, what capped off the pregame show, and this kind of came out of nowhere too, was Spelunky 2.
Yeah. What? Dude,
I-
Spelunky is a good jam.
I love roguelikes. This didn't quite do it for me because it was just something about the way it controlled I didn't quite jive on. But I love watching people play this goddamn thing. It's a good Twitch game.
That's fair.
But
It's a good
anyways,
game for people to play in the background when they're waiting for other games to load.
Yep, absolutely. A whole bunch of other stuff was announced too, but like I said, I'm only going to touch on a few things. And this led up into the show proper, which started off with possibly the biggest surprise I saw, and I'm shocked they did show this at E3. But keeping in the theme of only early 2018 games, they showed what Sucker Punch has been finally working on, and it's Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima. I thought for a split second it was an Onimusha reboot. And then for a split second...
Because watching the trailer, like from the start of it.
And then for a split second, I thought they might have been rebooting Tenchu.
See, I was down with the Onimusha.
Yeah, but both those games were fun. But yeah, this is from the Infamous guys, or the guys that did... Infamous. This is Sucker Punch. Let me rephrase that. This is from Sucker Punch. These are the guys that did Infamous. Ghost of Tsushima. No idea what the game is going to be about, or like if it's going to be an open world like Infamous was, or if it's going to be more of an action game like an Onimusha or a Tenchu, or even a Neo. But that trailer looked amazing.
That trailer looks awesome, but we still don't know shit about the game.
No, not even a release year. So something tells me that's going to be 2019.
It's just like an open world, like Samurai v Ninja game, kind of built in a similar fashion to Infamous, but playing more like Way of the Samurai.
So if you think about Sucker Punch's pedigree, right, mainly Infamous, think about how Cole McGrath or Deslin Rowe was able to like run up buildings. Now imagine like it makes sense for like a ninja to do that. They can just hop up and like Assassin's Creed almost.
Change the scheme, change the way everything looks, but you can get the controls, because I actually like the way Infamous plays. I think those games were really well done. But just set it in a whole new setting, a whole new story, whole new cast of characters, totally different reason for the characters to be there. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I definitely want more information, but I'm definitely excited about it. They went through a whole bunch of other titles as well. We're going to, like I said, pick a few of them here. One of them I saw was Concrete Genie, which looked like Magic Penguin finally working. If you remember what Magic Penguin was, it was this weird-ass obscure PlayStation 2 game. Essentially, this kid is going around being delinquent, putting graffiti on all his walls, and the wall characters come to life. Looks very kid-friendly to a degree. He does have a bunch of bullies trying to take his magic brush and beat the hell out of him. But the little characters he's painting on the wall are kind of adorable.
No, that's one of those things. I know there was the game that I guarantee that you're going to be excited for because it's a goddamn live-action FMV game.
Oh, yeah. I love those things.
Called Erica.
This looks good. I think it's going to use the PlayLink feature. I should have researched that before I came in there, but I believe it uses the PlayLink feature. That's kind of the Jackbox control scheme we talked about last week.
Yep.
It looks like it's a Quantic Dream game where you have those QuickTime events that say trust the guy or murder the guy or should you run or should you hide. So think Heavy Rain, think Beyond Two Souls, think Until Dawn, but live action instead. Also,
Which means that you're going to buy it instantly.
yeah,
You're super into this plan.
absolutely.
And you're so excited that this happens, so you have to give them money so that this can keep happening.
Yeah, you're goddamn right I am.
I know.
They moved to Spider-Man next. Spider-Man looks good, being done by Insomniac as a PlayStation exclusive, I believe.
At least a start.
Yeah. Both Peter Parker and Miles Morales were introduced in the trailer. So,
yeah,
awesome.
Everyone was kind of talking about that from the first trailer at E3, so it's cool that it's like very, very real.
Yeah, it's 100% confirmed now, it seems. You have Norman Osborn taking over as mayor as Wilson Fisk gets arrested. And then you have one of the more obscure Spider-Man villains, Negative Man.
He's not very optimistic.
No, it's... God damn it. The game looks fun.
I didn't know you were a supervillain.
The game looks solid, but true to my moniker, something about the way the character animations looked off to me.
Really?
Yeah, like that. Their faces looked weird. It's like you have this amazing looking gameplay and it looks really smooth, but then you get to the characters and the characters look a little, I don't want to say last gen to me, but there's something's off about them. I think it's because during this entire trailer, we were getting shown things like Ghost of Tsushima and the Detroit Becoming Human, which we're going to talk about next, and the final thing they closed with. And you look at all those animations.
You go hyper real, and then a Spider-Man game, which is going to be more cartoony, and the cartoony parts bother you because they're not as good looking as the other ones.
I'm not saying it's necessarily a valid criticism right now. I want to play in the game and see how it flows, but just something about jumping between those two things really felt off to me.
I think it looks dope, so I don't really know.
But yeah, they also talked more about Detroit Become Human. Gave it a quasi-release date, spring 2018. Really disturbing trailer about some domestic violence going on and whether or not the android is going to intervene or not. So that game's definitely going to push things. And then finally, they closed with an amazing trailer.
Dude.
For The Last of Us 2.
It's chilling. Oh man, they really kind of summed up a lot of the feelings you get from playing The Last of Us in a trailer that's 3 minutes long.
Not only a trailer, but a trailer that did not feature either Joel nor Ellie.
Yeah, no main characters.
And wasn't even clear if it was The Last of Us or not until the very end when you saw the clickers charging.
Yeah, technically that could have been anything right up until then.
And I think that's probably why we didn't see anything on Days Gone either. Because Sony has a little bit of a problem between Days Gone and The Last of Us right now because they're too similar to each other.
They're very similar.
In fact, when you show one, you have to not show the other by default because you'll just confuse people.
So maybe that's what they'll say for PSX. There'll be like a big giant Days Gone push.
Have you heard the rumors?
Last of Us will just go dark.
Have you heard the rumors about this Last of Us 2 trailer?
Yes, a lot of people want to believe, much like seeing a light post and thinking it's a UFO, that the super toned girl in the trailer is Ellie's mom.
Yes, and the Last of Us Twitter account is not doing anything to assuage that opinion. They introduced the cast on there. They showed Yara, and they introduced her voice actor, and then they showed the, I think, boy with a bow and arrow, and they introduced his character, and then it gets to whoever the character being hung was, and they give her first name. It's being voiced by Jennifer Hale. She's FemShep. I believe it's voiced by Jennifer Hale. And it has her first name, but the last name's blacked out.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, yeah, they're definitely teasing something with her, and this could be like a flashback. Remember, Last of Us takes place 20 years after the collapse. What we could have been like 5 years after the collapse.
However long.
Yeah. But yeah, so that kind of wraps up Paris Games Week.
That's all cool and all, but hold on. Let's flip this over real quick. Now, last I checked, Joel had a kid, right?
Joel had a girl who, spoilers for The Last of Us.
No. Before you go anywhere, did that kid have a mom?
Yes. I think the mom died.
You think?
I'm
Did
not
we
positive.
see it in the video game?
Hold on. Let me look this up. Let me see if Joel actually confirms if his wife's dead or not. Joel's wife, Last of Us. I think she died. I'm pretty sure she died.
Here's the thing: is I don't recall, and I could be wrong. Fucking put me on blast on YouTube or whatever if I'm completely wrong. But I don't recall at any point them saying, "Oh yeah, she's wicked dead," and it could have been like, "Hey, maybe they just had an estranged marriage, and he was the solo parent of their daughter." Or maybe it was the weekend and it was his turn, and there's this other girl who's alive who's been just being badass the whole time. Maybe I'm just saying.
So what I'm reading here is that no mention is given as to the fate or whereabouts of Joel's wife. However, it is later revealed through a conversation between him and Ellie that the subject of whatever happened is very painful for Joel to talk about. As a result, he raised their daughter as a single parent for the majority of his life. So she could have cheated on him and left, or she could have died like during childbirth or just died later. They apparently never answer that question, but she was out of the picture when the outbreak happened.
While I'm probably wrong, it's enough of a question mark that I'm going to go ahead and just be wrong on this one and say, fuck it. Maybe it's Joel's ex-wife.
Yeah, I think you're wrong.
I know. I'm almost positive I'm wrong. But what if?
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
It's like
no one actually knows.
It's like that one time when I said a water park was going to open up in Iraq, and then like a year later, a water park opened up in Iraq.
Yeah, it's just a dumb thing. It's probably Elle's mom. That's what makes way more sense. That's what's way more interesting story-wise. But I'm not here to be interesting story-wise. I'm here to be an asshole.
Yeah, fair enough. Or it could. Here's a brain fuck. What if The Last of Us does take place in 2 time periods, and what if that's Ellie 20 years later?
Oh shit! Throw everybody, and that's just actually further into the future.
No. They gave her first name on the Twitter account. That can't be it.
I mean, that could just be a stage name. We don't know. No one knows.
I'm backing off of that prediction.
It looks super dark. It looks fucking awesome. And that is a pretty good wrap on Sony's so far showings at Paris Game Week.
Right. Now let's get a little bit into what the fuck happened with Visceral Games.
Oh, man.
As we talked about last show, Visceral Games is closed. The Star Wars project that they were working on has been handed off to elsewhere. And we really weren't elsewhere. I'm running on very low sleep. Leave me alone.
It's fine.
And we really don't know what happened behind the scenes until recently. Via a Kotaku article by Jason Schreier, you know, that guy Jason. Fucking breaks everything, there is a massive, and I do mean massive, article up called The Collapse of Visceral's Ambitious Star Wars Game. And this thing goes on for days, but I highly suggest anyone who has an interest in this stuff, read it word for word. We are going to be going over this article. There will be a link provided down below if you're watching this on YouTube, so you can just click right on it. But props to Jason Schreier for doing all the groundwork on getting all this together. I will say that a lot of this comes from anonymous sources, so take that with what you will. I have no reason to think that he made them up at all. I think they're all legit. But I think it's important to say that there are no names from developers on here because they don't want to risk their further careers.
Dude, all I know is that this article could be like a DLC to his book.
Yeah, I mean that's what he does, right? He goes, he digs deep and goes way into like the history of some stories. The article, to sum up, essentially talks about how Ragtag, which is the project that the Star Wars game was being codenamed, was essentially sunk by a lack of resources and vision, too ambitious for its budget. It was a difficult game engine to work with, a director who just did not get along with the staff, the studio located in one of the most expensive of the worlds, a reputation for toxicity amongst upper management of Visceral, and just multiple conflicts between Visceral and EA. So,
well, and that's not even counting the conflicts between like Visceral and the people that actually own the Star Wars licenses.
Yeah,
all just it was a huge shit show. Is the very, very Cliff Notes version of that article.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of things. In one part of the article, he mentions the project that they were working on before Ragtag, and Visceral was working on a project called Yuma, which was, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It was supposed to be a open world game crossed between Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where on the ground you were doing Tomb Raider stuff, and it was open world but smaller contained open worlds, but in space you were flying around in a Millennium Falcon like ship just blasting things. That sounds fucking amazing.
Yeah, basically it's well, I think it wasn't even going to be Star Wars at first, and then it got kind of turned Star Warsy.
What happened?
Because originally it was going to be just like a pirates game.
Yeah, they were working on something called Jamaica. And then Black Flag came out, and people were like, oh, well, we can't ape Assassin's Creed, so let's make our own thing.
Yeah, that's why I got all fucked up there. Got my notes mixed up.
But eventually...
But yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so they had this idea going on in there. And that was the project for it. It wasn't even supposed to be a Star Wars game, if I recall right. It was supposed to be just be a space game. I'll have to reread the article to be sure on that. But that project eventually got pulled. And they put all of them on Battlefield Hardline.
Mainly because they needed people to work on Battlefield Hardline, because that game was also a shit show.
This was part of... Well, they created Battlefield Hardline, essentially. This was part of EA's shift from big single-player stuff to more of a games-as-a-service thing. And especially after Dead Space 3 failed to make the 5 million copies sold that EA was like demanding from a niche genre to begin with. They're like, okay, you guys are working on something that can make us a lot of money, which is going to be Battlefield Hardline, because they can sell DLC, they can sell map packs and all that. But progress on that fucking sucked too, because apparently no one at Visceral wanted to work on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they all got pulled off of this game that they were making out of love, Yuma, because they all wanted to make this cool, like, space rogue scoundrel game, and it said, hey, now you got to work on this fucking first-person shooter, and they didn't want to do it.
Yeah,
so
and most of these guys never worked
really
on a first-person shooter before either, so that was fun.
And they had no interest in it. So then you have a bunch of artists, you have a bunch of engineers, you have a bunch of people just start leaving the studio because they don't want to make a Battlefield game. They wanted to make the game they wanted to make.
Yeah, and morale dropped. According to one person who was working on the game throughout most of Hardline's production, Visceral had the worst team health survey at EA for like 2 years running. So you have this studio whose morale is just fucked, given projects they don't want to do. Enter Amy Hennig. Amy Hennig comes in.
Which, if, you go by the news and what everybody knew, because we reported when Amy Hennig went over there, and we were excited for it. We're like,
yeah,
oh, shit. She worked on the Uncharted series. She's got a pretty good pedigree. The games that she gets to come out are really fucking good. So this is great, because it sounded like that project was struggling a little bit. Yeah, and she nuked the idea of the open world space game and turned it to a linear. She essentially turned it to Uncharted in space, which is what I wanted. That's true. That is exactly what you wanted her to do. I think if you go back, that might be true. So yeah, she comes in. She kind of rearranges things. Visceral gets split up into two teams. There's Amy Hennig kind of prototyping the idea of what they want the next Star Wars to be. And then there's the rest of people working on Hardline. Hardline finishes. Most people didn't want to do it. The guy who was running the general manager of Visceral gets canned. And apparently a lot of people who worked at Visceral didn't care much for him. And then your team got split into two sides proper. You had one half working on Ragtag, which is what Yuma turned into. Yep. And you had the other... the action-y, linear version of Yuma, kind of. Right. And then you had the other half forced to work on Battlefield Hardline DLC, which was a game they didn't want to work to begin with. They wanted to work on this other game, and tensions in the actual company, the actual studio, started to kind of build from that. You had half the people going, oh, I get to work on my dream, and the other half of people going, I'm fucking cranking my Battlefield Hardline. I didn't want to work on this in the first place. Why am I still doing this? Yeah, one of the quotes, here it is. It was made very clear for the development team that MVPs were the ones creating Star Wars magic, while us lowly mortals slaved away on Hardline DLC. So if you didn't get picked to work on Star Wars, it was like a sign that you weren't good enough. At least that's how people were taking it. That's how people felt. And then there's
Yeah.
the fact they didn't actually have anybody working there. Visceral had fewer than 100 employees while this was going on. Meanwhile, Amy Hennig, who was used to working on really fucking big, profitable games, like when she did Uncharted 4 or like when Tomb Raider games happened, there's like 200 plus people working on those games.
Yeah,
So
it
having
was
a team of less than 100 trying to build like a huge AAA style game that normally can have 200, 300, 400 people, depending on how much like outsourcing, whatever else they need to do. Yeah, it's going to be rough, especially when probably a tenth of them, a quarter of them, I don't even know how many, are working on Hardline DLC.
Yeah.
So less
So
than 100 people. Not all of them are even working on this one project.
let's recap. Visceral Studios, EA fucked with Dead Space 3. Dead Space 3 didn't sell 5 million copies. Dead Space 3 was never going to sell 5 million copies.
Not a chance.
In fact, I think it actually sold less than Dead Space 2 because EA fucked with it as far as that goes. People were like, no, this isn't Dead Space. I want to buy it.
Mm-mm.
They forced Visceral to make Battlefield Hardline, a game none of them wanted to make, and that fucking sucked. They had to put off their dream games to make...
Well.
Yeah, they had to put off their dream games to make this. The general manager, Steve...
Papalowitz.
Thank you.
I don't know how to say his name, but it's
Apparently he
like
was
that.
an ass. They get rid of him finally and bring in Amy Hennig. But Amy Hennig goes, okay, I'm taking the top talent to make a Star Wars game, and the rest of these people are working on Battlefield DLC, which they don't want to be working on. So you not only have a publisher who's expecting high demands from Visceral, a studio that has gone through management change, and a studio that is divided over like they're pissed off at each other. There's clearly some jealousy issues going on there.
Like a year or two ago, they were all working on their dream game.
Yeah.
And now, well, one, you have a whole bunch of talented people that left. Then you have some of them that are working on a very modified version of their dream game, and a bunch of people that are still working on a dumb project that they didn't want to work on in the first place.
And on top of all of that, EA insists every one of their fucking games runs on Frostbite. And Frostbite is fucking garbage. From the article, Visceral found itself trying to make a third-person game on an engine built for first-person shooters. And we can see what fucking happens when you do that with Mass Effect Andromeda.
And we don't even have to do that. We can go back to Dragon Age.
Yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition, while a fun game, was chock full of fucking graphical issues because that engine is not meant to handle that.
Yeah, it's meant to make really, really pretty first-person shooters. Every other thing needs to be coded into the engine from the ground up.
Yeah.
You want a health bar that's displayed? Well, guess what? Frostbite doesn't fucking do that natively. They have to actually get somebody to make it and code it and then see if it works all the time. That's how they go through every single step.
Yeah, and that's fucking EA going, oh, it has to have Frostbite because we made Frostbite. It's like, fuck off. Your engine is good for first-person shooters.
I get that your engine looks really good. And there was a point in time where I'm like, oh shit, that's going to run on Frostbite? That sounds amazing.
And
until I realized exactly what Frostbite was and the fact that it's an FPS engine, and that's really it.
That's why Star Wars Battlefront 2 looks fucking amazing from everything I've seen on so far, right?
Yeah, but it's not Unreal.
No, it's not. It's not versatile at all.
Yeah, it doesn't have every single tool just built into it already.
Yeah,
it's not an entire engine. It's part of an engine.
So you have...
It can make really, really good scenery.
So you have all that nonsense, all that strife, and they're forced to work on an engine that doesn't fucking work with what they're trying to make. They have to build everything from the ground up. And then, on top of all of that, they don't own the IP to Star Wars. So everything they do has to be greenlit by Disney.
Yep. Because you can't make any changes. Not when they have a big master universe like that. You can't touch it. That's not up to you.
Yeah, these guys have...
a creative director at Disney somewhere who's in charge of that brand. You can't screw with it.
Yeah. These guys literally have people on staff whose sole goal is to make sure every bit of lore lines up with every other bit of lore. It's one of the reasons why they nuked the expanded universe when Disney took over, because they had to restart it again, because the expanded universe was filled with contradictions everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Still don't shit about midichlorians, though.
Yeah. Technically canon. So they would make a change, and they would go, we think of this, and fire that change off to Disney, and it would take months or years for Disney to get back and go, yes, this is fine. But in the meantime, it's not like you can just...
No, there's no one that has that kind of gun. That gun doesn't fit in with what our vision of the universe is.
And it's not like you could just sit there and wait for them to come back. So you're working away on this one thing only to get
Hoping
told
they say yes.
4 months later, nope, that's not going to work.
Then you have to pull it, or hope that you can redesign it to something better.
There's so much wrong with this one, and the scope of the project got unruly. It was apparently going to be bigger than Uncharted 4, and just the staff and the resources and the effort needed to require this just was not there.
They didn't really have the money behind it either, because you also figure the fact that Visceral is based in San Francisco, and every single employee probably costs like $16,000 a month to fund so they can actually live there, because San Francisco is one of the most expensive cities in the world to live in.
Yeah, flat out.
Flippin' expensive.
Yes, and I've been to the Visceral Studios campus at Redwood City. It is an amazingly beautiful campus and possibly one of the ritziest parts of the Bay I've ever seen.
Right?
So there's that to consider.
This is where finding a studio apartment for $3,400 a month is like a steal, right?
Right. It's bad. To give you an idea, there are people in the city of San Francisco itself who charge $3,800 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment with a shared bathroom with everyone else in the apartment. Yeah. So you have all this clusterfuck going on. And then you have EA as the publisher, who market tests and focus tests everything ad nauseum. So you would have executives walking in going, where's Chewbacca? Where are the lightsabers? Where are the Jedi? But this is a Star Wars game that has none of that, because Star Wars is more than that.
But no one wants to admit it, which is really frustrating, because a lot of fans and people like me that are nerds want more of the universe.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I loved Shadows of the Empire and Dark Forces so much. Because your main character had no force powers.
Rogue One.
Yeah. No force powers. Jedi are supposed to be like 2 left in the entire universe.
They're supposed to be fucking rare. We don't need to constantly follow them around.
So...
Because this isn't... I mean, oh my god.
So they kept focus testing and going...
Not everything's taking place before episode 1.
Yeah, they kept going, you need to put in famous characters, and you need to have lightsabers, and where's the force powers? Who's your Jedi user? And it's like, fuck off. Although, I will say, if this game would have had Lando Calrissian in it, that would have been a perfect fit from when I heard about it. He could have been one of your handlers.
Or yeah, you just meet him. Fuck.
Yeah.
Just, oh, dude, we got to make a drop in Cloud City. There's this guy. He'll get us a good price, I promise. You don't park it in the famous part. No, you don't land on the big ass swoopy cloud. No, you fucking come in the cloud. You land in the side where it's all fucking hazy. You can't see shit. Take a goddamn freight elevator to the side. Lando comes strolling out.
Yeah, he could have been smuggling shit out, like during Empire Strikes Back or something.
That sounds amazing.
So you have the focus, you have the pressure from EA going, hey, this needs to have this and needs to have this. And additionally, EA was going, hey, you need to hit a fucking 90 on Metacritic or higher. Which
is insane. What the fuck, guys?
If it was a long-standing franchise like Assassin's Creed, like Uncharted, like Mass Effect even, that's a reasonable goal, over 90. But this isn't that. They have to build everything from the ground up. Shit's going to be wonky because of that, because you're making them use Frostbite. This is going to be more like Watch Dogs or Uncharted, and they fucking just go, nope, you need to be fucking best at your game on the first try. So just all this unreasonable pressure. It's the same fucking thing they did when they said Dead Space 3 had to sell 5 million copies.
It's insane.
Unreasonable amounts of pressure. And then, as much as I love Amy Hennig, apparently she was a bit of a perfectionist on this. She wanted
to see that.
Yeah, I get it.
Well,
James Cameron's the same way, right?
Say that. Yeah, exactly. And like, okay, we need to do 94 takes of this, and that's how it's going to be. But she also came from Naughty Dog, which is a team kind of infamous for being as tight-knit as they are, and as hardworking they are, and as willing to crunch as they are. And those guys will work all day, every day.
And has done 5 games in this genre that are excellent. Uncharted 1, 2, 3, 4, and The Last of Us.
Yeah.
So they have this fucking down pat.
And she's trying to direct Visceral, who's done nothing like it.
Yes. Apparently, Hennig had a hard time trusting a team that had no experience working on games like Uncharted, which made her feel competitive to have her hands on everything, which means that it would take weeks for her to okay stuff. Because if you're handling every single part of the game,
that means sound directors can't add a sound effect into the game without Well, so they got to talk to Amy first and say, hey, this is the sound effect I want to make for this blaster. Is that cool? Yeah, sure. And then they have to send it off to the Disney guys so they can listen to it and see if it actually fits in with Star Wars. And then they go wait however long. And by that point, they already have it coded into the game, and the blaster's in there. It feels good. It sounds cool. And what, months and months later?
Let's say even Disney okays it.
And then Amy decides she doesn't like it anymore because it doesn't fit in with this blaster or this other. I mean,
Yeah.
It's just so many people making the same decision. It's a really bad idea. And I get that she felt the need to be involved in every step, but god damn, that's basic fucking management skills.
Yeah, and apparently at least 3 former
Learn
Visceral
to
employees bounced
delegate.
out because of this.
I mean, you have to learn to delegate. That's just the way you manage people. It's not rocket science.
It's hard for me to necessarily bash that mentality when you have an unlimited budget and time. But Amy Hennig, as talented as she is, she's not James Cameron. James Cameron could go to a studio and go, I've made 3 of the top 5 grossing Hollywood films of all time. I'm going to take 10 years to make this movie. And a movie studio would go, okay.
Yeah, and you're going to keep giving me money until it's done. And they're going to go, okay. Because they're going to make it back.
Amy Hennig, as awesome as her writing is, and as great as her reputation is not a James Cameron, I'm afraid. And
well, I mean, no one in the games industry really is.
No one is.
Because there are no guarantees in this industry.
The closest thing I can think of was Ken Levine back when he was doing BioShock Infinite. And I don't think Infinite actually ended up making money because of that.
Well, it'd be like if Ken Levine had made Infinite and then immediately got picked up by another studio to start working on a completely unrelated game made by a team that had never made a first-person shooter before, and then he started making that game play exactly like BioShock, but a completely different universe.
You know what? I take that back. There is one name I can think of that can be given a blank check and all the time they want in the world, because it's happened.
Peter Molyneux.
No, Hideo Kojima. Because Sony did that. They essentially went, take all the time you want, here's all the money you could possibly have. But Amy Hennig still isn't Hideo Kojima. Most people on the street don't know who she is, which is a tragedy in my opinion. I think that game writers and directors need to be getting just as much recognition as the actors behind them too. But that's just a fact of the matter.
That's not where the industry is right now.
No.
We're not there yet. But I think that's kind of okay, because with how seedy their industry is, I don't think we need to be there yet.
Yeah, so she was used to working in a certain way, and Visceral was used to working in another, so you had that clashing as well. So, once again, to recap yet again, costs too much to live there. EA is meddling and focus testing the game to death. You're missing milestones because fucking Disney has to sign off on every single thing, and that takes forever. Frostbite Engine fucking sucks. This is not what Visceral originally wanted to do, and the team itself was split into 2, and half the team is pissed off they're not working on what the other half is. In addition, the team is half the size they need to be. This game is fucked.
Seriously.
I can't even blame all this on EA. They hold a lot of blame here, but the chaos it sounds like that was happening at Visceral's level alone is enough to make the game just be fucked alone. So, but all this together, Jesus fucking Christ. And then
to make it even better, EA decided to involve a whole other studio. They decided they want Vancouver to take over the project. So all of a sudden, Ragtag has a new executive producer, lead designer, game director. And all of these people that are taking over these different projects about the game are in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Which is not in San Francisco.
Yes.
Which is not even in the same time zone.
No.
As San Francisco. So, yeah, just everyone's mad.
At this point, people start theorizing that EA is trying to pull control of Ragtag away from Amy Hennig and give it to the Vancouver team. Visceral's pissed because suddenly this other studio's coming in and making all the decisions on their behalf, the game they've been working on forever, and this bunch of new fucking people coming in going, no, you should do this, and EA's going, okay, yeah, we'll do that, and Visceral's like, what the fuck? Meanwhile, Vancouver's looking at the progress of the game, and they're like, the fuck? This is horrible. How are you not farther along on this?
There's like nothing done with this game.
And to top it all off, by the time mid-2017 comes along, the executives who go to look at EA, or at Ragtag from EA, who brought in Amy Hennig, that changed the scope of the game from an open world-ish Star Wars game to a linear, story-driven experience. They bring on the person who wrote the Uncharted games and then they complain that it looks too much like fucking Uncharted.
This looks like Uncharted. This looks like Uncharted. I think this is straight from Uncharted. You brought on the Uncharted girl. She's making Uncharted in space.
At the end of the day, the game finally gets canceled. It's all getting shifted over to Vancouver, which is going to make something that didn't... Which, ironically, is going to make an open-world Star Wars game, which is what Visceral wanted to do in the first place.
Yep. I'm willing to bet there's at least a couple of Visceral employees that are like, I'm just going to move to Vancouver. Fuck it.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a couple coats and get the hell out of here and see if I can actually work on the game I wanted to make in the first place.
According
to
one former Visceral employee, they said it honestly was a mercy killing, which is just harsh to hear, right? It had nothing to do with whether it was going to be single player. I don't even think it had anything to do with that. That game never could have been good and come out. And that's someone who spent who knows how many years working on it.
It could have come out, or it could have been good. It couldn't have done both.
Yeah.
They could have worked on it for the next 12 years, and it would have been the greatest like PS4, Xbox One game when we're on the next console cycle, and no one cares.
Anyways, if you want a full detailed accounting on what's happened, I highly, highly, highly recommend you take a look at Jason Schreier's Kotaku article titled, let me bring it up one more time.
The Collapse of
That's
Visceral
not it.
Star Wars game.
The Collapse of Visceral's ambitious Star Wars game came out Friday. It's an amazing but very long read. We spoke about this for 30 minutes now, and we just summed it up. So set some time aside to go over it, but I highly recommend it. Once again, thank you, Jason Schreier, for digging deep into this, for gathering up all the information. Yes, anonymous sources, but I get the feeling that they're legitimate anonymous sources. Anyways.
Also, legitimately, it's like a teaser chapter for his book.
So
if
yeah,
you like that story a lot, you should check out his book too. I don't even know the guy. I plug his book all the time.
Yeah, we've been pumping him really fucking hard. I think we might need to pull back, but he keeps like releasing shit. That's great.
Yeah, right. It's like we're giving him free advertisement, but the problem is that he's just good. It's really annoying.
So yeah, it wasn't just because Star Wars needed to shift from a single player to a more market-focused open world idea. That's the EA tech speak to keep, or public speak to keep the investors from pulling out. The game was a fucking train wreck. So yeah. Anyways, that is not the only thing that's happened over the past few days. We do have a couple more news stories before we get into new releases. And David,
it's one of the only things that's happened in the last few days.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead? I guess
you could say it's kind of good news that they canceled this game that's going to be trash, and now they're working on another thing. Less good news. Rocket League is now partnered up with WB, Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, and independent video game developer and publisher Psyonix, the guys that make Rocket League, announced a worldwide retail distribution agreement for the critically acclaimed international hit video game Rocket League, in a quote from GamesIndustry.biz.
In a press release at the GamesIndustry.biz. Need to be specific here. This is not an article written by them.
All right, I'm sorry. In a press release on this website, we've learned that WB, the company that I highly dislike because they keep doing shit that annoys me, are now going to be making money by releasing the physical copies of Rocket League for PS4 and Xbox. Now, while I understand that they did not actually help develop or publish this game, and they're only going to be taking over production for the physical copies of PS4 and Xbox, away from 505, who was publishing it before, I still don't like it, because fuck the WB. Everything they touch makes me upset because the way they make decisions bothers me. And Psyonix is a company that I actually really, really like. I've bought a shit ton of like crate keys and stuff for Rocket League, mostly because I like the company. It's a weird thing where I don't like microtransactions and I don't like a lot of extra DLC stuff. And I fully realize what the loot boxes are for in that game, and I have no issue with it because of how much I actually like Psyonix, and I want them to continue making content. That's why I pay more money for that game.
Fair enough.
Because I know exactly what it's for.
And it's not done in a ham-fisted...
Because maybe that means we'll get another song in the next couple months.
It's also not done in a ham-fisted way either. They've released multiple free updates to this game. Unlike,
anytime a new big content patch comes out with a bunch of new hats and trails and everything else, there's always new free content as well. New reels, new toppers, anytime there's a new map, everybody gets a new map.
Was
There's
the
no
Back to
paid
the
maps
Future
like-
car free, or did you have to pay for that?
All of the cars are paid.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
All the special cars, at least. And that's one thing that's interesting, and it was pointed out to me that a lot of the DLC cars that have been added to the game are actually based on Warner Brothers properties. Like you have the Back to the Future, you have Fast and Furious, you have stuff like that. But
I didn't even think about that.
In my mind, I never really associate WB as a movie company with the WB games industry. As weird as that sounds, I'm
Well,
just
it's
aware
like-
of the fact that they're completely different divisions. They're different
like-
people.
Associating Sony Music with Sony Interactive Entertainment, right? Until recently, when Sony Music just announced their
I was
publishing
going to
deal.
make that exact same comparison, but it doesn't really work. But it'd be like comparing Sony Pictures,
Yeah.
which is a film company, to Sony Computer Entertainment America.
Which is making Spider-Man.
They're completely different buildings in a company that's international,
Right.
based in different cities that work on completely different projects. Willing to bet that their head honchos don't even talk to each other, much less see each other.
Probably not. I would imagine not. They might have like a bi-yearly get-together, like once every 6 months, where they go, hey, this is what we're doing. But yeah, I think you're
There's
right.
probably like board meetings or something where the toppy top of those companies maybe come together. But even then, they're not going to start talking about project to project. They're going to
No.
talk about like quarterly earnings and other boring adult stuff. But anyway, guaranteed incoming collector's edition steelbook version of Rocket League to a PS4 or Xbox near you.
Other news that happened recently, we can now officially pronounce that the Kinect is dead. Its time of death was a little while ago. I don't have the exact date anymore.
Wow. Congratulations on fucking that up.
Yeah. Microsoft
How
fully
about
discontinues the Kinect.
10/25/17? Does that work for you?
Yeah, thank you. This is the IGN page to have it up, but the actual article comes via code.design because I put the wrong link in because I'm a fucking idiot. But according to that interview with code.design, manufacturer of the Kinect has shut down, and Microsoft shared this news with that website in an exclusive interview with Alex Kipman, creator of the Kinect, and Matthew Lapson, GM of Xbox Devices Marketing. The Kinect's dead. Good. I don't think anyone really wanted it. I liked what it tried to do,
Remember
but it
that
never
time when
really
they tried to
worked
pack
well.
it in with the Xbox, and everyone got real mad,
Yeah, because it fucking jacked the cost up $100.
and no one wanted it, and then they made it standalone, and then no one gave a shit. And since its release, there's only been like 21 Kinect exclusive games.
Yeah, that did not pay off too well for them at all. That was essentially, it felt like it felt too much like they were trying to chase the Wii U, or the Wii, not the Wii U,
Well, I mean, you had Sony come out with the Move,
which equally like
PlayStation Move.
disappeared, and they had to repurpose that into the PlayStation VR.
Yeah, but see, at least that was like a much simpler thing, I guess.
Mhm.
Kinect was this big giant video camera contraption that moved. I don't know. That you yelled at, and then they added Cortana, and like I don't know. It felt more cumbersome. As
It did.
ridiculous as people look with PlayStation Move controllers, they're still technically useful because you use them for the VR, and Sony is still pushing VR.
Right.
Xbox hasn't really been pushing Kinect anytime recently. They could have been working on the tech. They could have been releasing all kinds of updates. They could have doubled down on it. They didn't. It's dead.
Now, while the Kinect might be dead, the technology about it isn't. The cord sensor lives on. Kinect version 4 and soon to be version 5 are powering HoloLens. And I guarantee you in the next... I don't have a timeline, but they are looking to incorporate HoloLens technology into their next console. I can fucking promise it. And I don't mean the Xbox One X or whatever the fuck that thing's called, which I also think comes out next week. I'm not positive. I need to look at that. Maybe it's the week after. 7th? Okay.
Yeah, right when absolutely no Xbox One games come out.
But Crackdown 3, David, that's supposed to be a launch game.
That's not coming out next week, though.
No, not anymore.
Forza
I
7's already
guarantee
out.
you,
No one gives a
whatever
shit
the
about it.
next console after this Xbox One X is, they're going to have some kind of HoloLens integration into it.
I can see it. I believe it. Yeah, that's that. And I guess really the last thing we got to do is we have to talk about it because it's news and we are a news podcast. So it's just what we do. But I don't really want to talk about it because fuck Konami. Official GamePoints PC stance is fuck Konami.
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
But Metal Gear Survive now has a release date. Metal Gear Survive, for those that don't know, is Konami's last-ditch effort to get any of that Metal Gear money from fans that maybe somehow still have goodwill towards them and don't know what they did to Kojima. This is a game that has the name of a very popular franchise and fuck all to do with it.
Correct.
Metal Gear Survive is Konami's upcoming Metal Gear zombie survival spin-off game in which you play as soldiers shooting zombies, somehow related to Metal Gear, mostly because you're characters that are built in the fucking Metal Gear 5 engine.
But I was going to say mostly because they have to find some way to use the Fox engine somehow, and they also have to have some kind of fucking existing IP to justify it's happening. I do have the IGN page where I got the news article from.
They can't make another soccer game because their soccer game just came out. So,
and you can only use the Fox engine in so many pachinko machines before you start running out of juice on that way. The game is coming out February 20th, 2018, and in February 22nd out in Europe. If there is a God, and if Rockstar has a sense of humor, please release Red Dead Redemption 2 on February 20th, 2018.
I would be so happy if that happened. Are you kidding me?
Because remember what I was saying earlier, a lot of games slated for early next year, and it's more than just Sony, don't have a release date. Because everyone is holding their breath for Red Dead Redemption 2. And if that fucking game comes out February 20th, I am just going to laugh hysterically.
Dude, we'll have an entire podcast where we're just going to drink for an hour before the podcast, and it's going to be an hour of us laughing our fucking drunken faces off.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to that. But David, we won't be able to find out if that's going to come true.
But Konami, the 1 hour special.
Either way, we're not going to find out if that's true until February of next year. That is fucking months away.
That's quite a while.
What can I do now? What can keep me entertained right now?
Well, I think literally the existence of this might be enough to sustain you through this next week, because it is the most ridiculous shit that I've ever had to announce on this show. But this week, there is a new Bubsy game.
I can't believe it.
That Bubsy. The one that last had a game called Bubsy 3D that came out 21 years ago.
Didn't he have something called like Balls of Fur or something like that as one of the... You keep going. I'm gonna look up Bubsy games here.
Bubsy Balls of Fury? But Bubsy, The Woolies Strike Back, comes out this week on PS4 and PC. They couldn't even put it on Switch. The only console that I could possibly think of which might maybe potentially benefit from a new Bubsy game, which is a 2D action platformer. Why is this only on PS4?
I don't fucking know, man. I can't tell you.
Was Bubsy a PlayStation exclusive? Because I honestly don't remember. It's been too long.
But here's a fun fact. Acclaim, the guys that made Bubsy, went out of business in 1999. But much like how THQ, how the Nordic Games bought THQ, a Hong Kong-based holding company called Billionsoft announced that they had acquired the Accolade branding. So Bubsy: The Woolies Strike Back is actually published by Accolade. The original,
way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of dope.
They essentially did a Nordic Games THQ thing where they just bought the name, and then rather than using their name, they're using the name of a defunct publisher to push this game.
I mean, this game looks like it cost $12 to make.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Let me read this again. In June 2017, they acquired the Accolade branding. Does that mean this game only had like a 2 or 3 month development? No, that can't be right?
Did you watch the trailer for it? I fully believe that. The fact that iOS isn't listed